Welcome to the MS&Me Radio Network. The broadcast shows are for informational and entertainment purposes only. They are not designed to provide listeners with specific personal, medical, or counseling advice. Individuals with a medical issue should always consult their healthcare provider. MS&Me is not responsible for content of individual shows. The views expressed by show hosts or their guests are their own. Enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to Chronically Well Club Radio. My name is Rebecca Naylor. I am a health coach and very happy to be celebrating 20 years living with MS in remission. Very grateful to the MS Global Support Network for giving me the opportunity to host this weekly radio show. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I do. So Chronically Well Club is, I suppose you could say, my passion project. And it was launched just over a year ago, and it's my vision to really help other people, specifically those with MS, to discover the power that they already have inside their own bodies to heal, so that once they discover that power, they can recreate their own life. So if you've been following along since I started recording about 6 months ago, I talk a lot about what I call my 9 keys of healing. So these are different areas of lifestyle medicine, and that's what I talk about on this show. This is not a show where we talk about drugs and pharmaceuticals or any of the traditional ways of treating MS. We're talking about the things that are within your control to change about your lifestyle. So some of those things are your diet, your toxic load, emotions, movement and exercise, community and communication, your cognition, your environment, your gut health, and your mindset and belief. So today we're really going to be focusing in very specifically on environment, and even more specifically on the home environment. I have with me to interview today a dear friend, Sheila Doris. Sheila, say hi.
Hi.
Sheila, I met about a year ago, maybe a year or two ago. She is an interior designer, and I'll tell you a little bit about what she does. So she specializes in renovating spaces, primarily for homeowners, though I think you do some offices as well. She does a lot of work in kitchens and bathrooms specifically, and likes creating very highly functional spaces where there's a lot of movement and use happening, if I'm correct. She does a lot of small additions and really helps people to organize and solve problems with space and usage. She teaches a lot of seminars on design-related topics in various locations here in Toronto, Canada, and she has a background in teaching from the college system, so she's very well educated herself and highly knowledgeable in this area, and I'm very happy to welcome you to the show, Sheila.
Thank you very much.
So let's get started here. We're going to be talking a lot today about the home environment and how a person's home impacts their health and wellness, because our home and our space impacts our psychology. It impacts our emotions. Is that correct?
That's very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
So as I was talking to Sheila before the show, she was telling me, and I'm going to quote you here, that you like to create unique environments to suit an individual. And you said that some of the things you look at are physical, structural. Some of it relates to the person's personality. So tell me a little bit about how you would create a unique environment to suit an individual.
Well, everybody has unique preferences, and they're also physically different. So people who are very tall or very short, or people who have challenges with balance, let's say, or challenges with some physical ability, need special treatments. They need things specially designed for them. They also have preferences. Some of us like things that are really bright and colorful, and other people are much quieter and more introverted, and we prefer spaces that are cleaner, cooler, and maybe not as tactile.
Yeah, the idea of being introverted or extroverted is something I find very interesting, because a lot of people mistake that idea for whether or not a person is shy or outgoing. But it's really about the level of stimulation, isn't it? A person who is an extrovert likes a really high level of stimulation, bright color, loud noises, right?
Exactly.
Whereas a person who's an introvert likes a low level of stimulation, neutrals, calm colors, right?
Well, they tend to. I mean, generally people do talk about it as to how how they recharge their batteries and whether they like to be with people or not with people. But there is a correlation with people who are extroverted are usually the kind of people who like high levels of stimulation even in their environment. They like stimulation with people, but they also like stimulation by visual things, whether that's pattern or scale of pattern and color and texture. And introverts tend to prefer calmer spaces as well.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the homes of people who have multiple sclerosis specifically. Now we're talking about a very, very diverse group of people. I'm not sure if you're aware, but MS is known as the snowflake disease because it affects no person in the exact same way. So there are many, many different manifestations of this challenge for our listeners. But one of the things that I am hearing a lot from the people who are contacting me and writing in is this idea of social isolation. And that a lot of times when people are diagnosed with a chronic illness, unfortunately, there does tend to be a shift in the people who that person sees on a daily basis, whether it's because they have to leave their job or whether it's because sometimes friends and family don't quite know how to cope with the news and there can be a bit of distance. Or maybe they're not able to participate in some of the activities they used to before. And so a lot of people are telling me that there's difficulty with depression and really feeling socially isolated because they don't get out of their homes a lot. Now, because I'm hearing this, I thought definitely we need to talk more about the home specifically as that environment that a lot of people with MS spend the most time in for that reason. So given that they are so isolated, let's make sure that that home is a place where they want to spend time, a place that really reflects their personality, that feels like a sanctuary to them, and that really feels like a place they can invite other people into. Because if you can't get out necessarily as easily to engage with the world, then we want to make sure we create a space where you feel comfortable inviting other people in. Now, I know that you're quite experienced in color theory. So color is very, very important when you're designing a space, whether it's the color on the walls or the color of the objects. So tell me a little bit about color and what it represents.
Well, there are two ways to look at color. And one is about color personalities and styles, the type of person that you might be. A lot of people associate color with temperament and with different personality traits. And then there is how color impacts on a space. And generally, you can talk about color in the groups of warm colors and cool colors. Cool colors make space more restful and make space much calmer, and warm colors invigorate and they lift spirits. So the warm colors, if you're thinking about something like yellow is a color that you can actually put a lot of white in it, so it's not necessarily too bold. It's a color that is optimistic, it's a color that makes you feel good, and it's a color that goes with many different things. And so a lot of people will see yellow as sort of the calmest of all the warm colors. Red and orange are much more playful and they're
Spicy.
much bolder. Yes. And we use them in smaller doses. So that's not to say we can't use them, but bright red walls tend to overwhelm and overpower. So you might think, oh, I'm going to do that because it's perky and it spices the space up. But if you were to see it from below your feet to above your head, it can be very overwhelming. And so we might put red toss pillows in. We might put a red carpet. When you put color on the floor, that's the place to use the strongest color because it has the least impact on us in terms of how it affects the size of the space and how it affects our feelings and our emotions and reactions to it. So if you're looking to do something really bold, get an area carpet that's got bright, splashy colors in it, and it will give you excitement, but it won't overwhelm.
It's funny, I keep thinking about my past and how our personalities can change over time, and so does our design interests, because we're recording this right here in my office, which is also my bedroom right now. And I was saying to Sheila, what does this say about me? Because my room is all black, white, and gray. It's all neutral tones in my bedroom. But I think back to my bedroom as a child, and my walls were neon yellow. My carpet was royal blue, and I had red, like it was all red and green. It was all primary colors, bright, 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 intense. So yeah, as our tastes change, as our personalities change, so our spaces change as well, right?
Absolutely. And as we go through different things in life, they change too. So children see color very different than adults see color.
Really?
Yes, yeah, they do. They relate to it, and if you think about primary school and the colors they use in the schools, but there are other things that they still affect children in ways that sometimes are hard to manage. So if you paint walls bright red in a daycare center, and that's where the kids have to sleep, and you put them on cots, and it's bright daylight, it's not dark, so the color's not sort of fading with the darkness, and you want them to relax. It's something that's actually counterintuitive if you think about it. It actually jazzes them up.
That makes sense. sense because if I look at the rooms in my house right now, so the most color I suppose I have in my home right now is in the living area, and I do have yellow, like bright yellow cushions and vibrant greens and teal blues. So that's where where I want to be a little bit more energized if I'm entertaining or being social. But then in the bedroom, that's where I want to rest and sleep. I have actually literally an absence of color, right? The black, white, and gray.
Right.
So,
And you may also find that seasons affect how you see color and what you want to have with you in color. So sometimes people will have brighter colors in the winter because there's less light and because less hours of light and the light isn't as strong. And so you may want to be cheered up more in the winter. And
Right.
or you may actually want to have greens that remind you of outdoors. If you like gardens and you like to be outside,
Yeah.
then in the winter, all the white outside or the gray outside, we're really missing green desperately.
Absolutely. That's why I have yellow and green in my living room year round, because I need to pretend it's not Canadian winter. I find it really hard. Okay, that's great. Great idea. And I know you mentioned that there was a website that was really good for learning more about color theory and what colors mean.
The color personalities, especially, it's a great website, and it's about what it does is it talks to you about empowering color and how you can use it by knowing your color style, who you are, what kind of color person you are, and what that person really needs. And as I say, that can change over time, because even the great artists, Van Gogh and many others, would have periods of time where they would have periods of color.
Absolutely. So you can find that website that Sheila recommended by Googling or searching for Empower Yourself with Color Psychology.com. So really interested to check that out later. Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about choosing accessories and accents for a physical space, because a lot of people will come into my home, and yes, I do have an artistic background, and so people will come in and say, wow, everything's laid out in such a neat way and it looks all cozy, and I just don't know how to do that. So some people just don't naturally know like what kind of accents or accessories they should not that they should have in their home, but they could have in their home to make it feel better for them. So how do you go about helping people to choose those things?
Well, I always can tell something about what a person already has and also what they gravitate to and what they enjoy. So if somebody likes to travel, like I've worked with a lot of school teachers over the years, and very often when they travel a great deal and their summer's off, they'll bring back something from the different places they go. So somebody might have a collection of bells, one lady did, or somebody might say, well, you know what, I really love safari animals. And so if your style is exotic and you like leopard prints and that sort of thing, then you might go to a shop that sells that kind of thing. You might use a drum as an end table instead of, let's say, a glass table. You might use a mask on the wall, or you might use a hanging that comes from Africa, a batik, or something very bright and bold that is tribal in its style or its design. Toss pillows that are tribal. If you're the kind of person who likes everything very sleek and clean, then you would have fewer accessories, and you might choose larger ones. Instead of having 2 or 3 small things on a dresser, you might choose a large vase. And that's a cleaner look, and that's a less cluttered look, if you will.
I never thought about that. Yeah.
You might choose large pictures rather than a grouping of 3 or 4 pictures on a wall.
That's interesting. Yeah, I never really thought about it that way. I always just think of the number of things on the wall, period, but not necessarily how large they are, because one large print could be enough to really take up a whole wall if that's a focal point, right?
And if you like bright colors, it needs room to breathe, and you don't want to put too much around it or it feels cluttered.
It feels cluttered, yeah. And I think that's one of the things that really, over the past 20 years that I've been managing my MS and thinking about all these 9 keys that I talk about, that's one of the things that really helped me understand how important an environment was. Because I find clutter in an environment almost universally causes stress for people. So when there are just too many objects, when there are too many things, when there are too many papers piling up or dishes by the sink, it makes people feel quite overwhelmed and quite anxious a lot of the time.
And that's something you're highly aware of, but a lot of people aren't. Clutter does affect us. I actually incorporate that in quite a few of my talks, because clutter, even at an unconscious level, it's something that it takes energy to repress our irritation with it or our feelings of overwhelm. Right. a disorganized space or a space that is cluttered and not well laid out with flow and ease as you go between things, like moving between chairs or the flow in an aisleway or a walkway between things. If that is broken up with too many things, then we feel that the space isn't safe. It's very unconscious. It's not at a conscious level, and you don't have to have a challenge to feel that. And also, there's a bit of guilt involved in cluttered spaces too that we don't often recognize. But there's that little voice in the back of your head that says, you should really clean up. You know that if you've got people coming over and there's a big race around to put things away. And so if you feel that way about how other people will see it, then know that at an unconscious level it's bothering you as well.
Isn't that interesting? That, and I think that's almost universal too, that we do it when other people are coming over. So we care more about what another person thinks of us than we do about having the clean space to live in ourselves. And doesn't that say something interesting about how much our stress and our well-being is linked to our image and how other people view us? That's interesting.
But also we think that we can tolerate things that we're not even aware consciously are bothering us, or they're sort of just niggling at our unconscious level, and we just don't feel as calm in a space that's got a lot of things out of place.
I find myself more and more over the years moving more and more towards, I see myself eventually being very minimalist. Probably about 5 times a year at least. I go through my entire space, closets, boxes, everything, and just pick things up and go, do I love this? Does it bring me joy? Is it useful? Is there a purpose for this? Have I even thought about it in the past year? And I just have like a great purge every couple months. And my friends are always joking, like, what did you start with? When every couple months you find a garbage bag worth of stuff that you can get rid of. But for me, it's a real cleansing. And for people with MS especially, and other autoimmune diseases, it is so vital for us to keep our stress levels at the lowest possible level, because we know without a doubt now that stress quite possibly triggered the onset of the disease, but we know definitely that it continues to trigger symptoms and potentially relapses. So it's so important to create that stress-free space.
Well, and spaces that are uncluttered are also a lot less work to clean, a lot less work to keep clean, and so it simplifies life.
And that's important for people with MS who have a lot of weakness, chronic fatigue, things like that, because it's unfortunate, but a lot of people with chronic illness are the ones who most need help maintaining their home through like a cleaning service. But unfortunately, a lot of them had to leave their jobs and are living on insurance payouts if they're lucky to even get approved by an insurer, right? So yeah, it's a challenge. And so that's a really good point. The less stuff we have, the less stuff we have to constantly be putting away in its place. Any other suggestions that you have for keeping, I think you mentioned flow and ease, having a space that flows easily?
Well, having more space than you need, so that when you move through the space, that you can move simply and easily without having to sort of move to the side to get past something, or that allows your arms to move back and forth as you're moving. Sometimes when I used to teach interior design, students would do floor plans and they would think, well, 2 feet here is plenty of space. But if you have to turn sideways to get past something, that is breaking the flow, and it also makes the space feel smaller, and it makes it feel a little bit more overwhelming to actually get up and do something. You think to yourself, okay, well, I have to get past this, I have to go here and I have to do that, or I have to move this and I have to move that. So
that actually, I feel stressed out even thinking about living in a space like that, because I don't know about you listeners, but I bump into things all the time, because incoordination, aka clumsiness, is one of the challenges of people with MS, because from a neurological perspective, often our brains are not sending clear messages to our limbs about exactly where we want them to go in space. And so there is a lot of tripping and bumping into things and knocking things over. So yeah, I really feel that I need to have that clear route from point A to point B, especially those routes that I take all the time, like bed to bathroom. Like, there is nothing between my bed and the bathroom. It needs to be a straight line, because I know that that's somewhere I frequent as a person with MS, and I need to make sure I don't need to maneuver around any furniture, especially in the middle of the night, right?
Right, and cut off corners. So sharp corners on any path of traffic are actually something that are uncomfortable. Feng Shui talks about that. Talks about that's one of the interesting things, that flow and ease is definitely a big part of that whole system of design. But
I don't know much about Feng Shui. And we don't, obviously we don't really have time to get into it today, but if you could just in a couple of sentences kind of introduce what that system is. Like, what is Feng Shui?
That you are more comfortable and happier in a space if the energy or chi of the space moves and flows freely.
Right.
That's it in a nutshell, but there's also a lot of sort of prescriptions for how to, have more abundance in your life and how to have more flow in your life.
Right.
But quite simply, I mean, it was articulated very clearly in that particular way of design, that sharp corners are actually something that we are uncomfortable with, even though, again, on the unconscious level. So that if you have a vanity in a bathroom and you can actually clip the corner of it and get a diagonal corner on it where you turn around, that's definitely more comfortable to maneuver in. And it's also the same in a kitchen. If you've got sharp corners. Yeah, exactly. Well, you don't walk into it, right? Most people don't walk straight and then make a right angle and turn.
No.
They always walk a bit on a diagonal, and we do cut corners. So if you have a desk that's near a doorway, moving it back from the doorway 6 or 7 or inches and not having it tight will help ease and flow through the space.
Cool. Okay, so we were talking a little bit earlier about kind of things that you might have on the walls, and we were talking about this idea of affirmations and vision boards. I'm a big fan of those things, and I talked a lot about affirmations in previous shows, but for anybody who missed that show, tell us what an affirmation is.
An affirmation is a positive statement of intent and or energy that you want to have in your life. So you might say, I choose joy in everything that I do, or I choose abundance. I look at things positively. Usually, it's stated as if it already exists in your life, and the energy is positive. It's framed like if you were wanting to give up a habit and say, I'm not going to eat junk food. So your affirmation for that would be, I choose to feed my body healthy things.
Right.
And so you're affirming what you want to do, the behavior you want to have, and also something that feels good to say about where you are and what you're doing to support yourself. So affirmations, a lot of them, people think of them in terms of abundance, but they can be about all kinds of things to do with energy, like I am strong, powerful, and healthy is a really great affirmation.
Absolutely.
And so there are lots of pictures online. If you Google I choose health would be a great one and you will see pictures. I use affirmations on vision boards. I run vision board workshops. And so what I do is I look for them online. The one I'm healthy, powerful, and strong it shows a picture of a woman, I think, standing on a beach and her arms are raised. And it's all in blues and greens. It's a really nice color, very water and sky. And it's calming, but it's also strengthening. So something like that, you don't have to go looking for posters. You can create your own. So you find one like that online, just put it on a USB stick and take it to somewhere like Staples and have them printed on an 8.5 by 11 or larger paper, colored paper. And then you can frame it and put it on the wall, or you can put it in a frame on a desktop or in a kitchen.
And I like to read my affirmations out loud, right? So it's not just about seeing them, but when we say the affirmation, it's also very affirming. I mean, we have that auditory memory of saying it and committing to it and owning it, right?
Right.
Now, you mentioned vision boards. Some of our listeners might not know what a vision board is, although they're crazy popular right now. So tell us what those are.
Well, it's the beginning of a new year, so people are doing them.
Yeah.
What a vision board is a collection of pictures or, as I said, affirmations. And sometimes people will put a pin or something that is a little bit of a good luck charm on them. And sometimes they put a picture of themselves in it. And what it is a collection of collage, usually, of these things with textures and colors and on a board. And you put it on to affirm the things that you want to have happen in the next year, let's say.
I love the way you said that you want to have happen. Okay, interesting. When I was a special education teacher, I did a vision board assignment with my students. And I was trying to figure out why they kind of weren't, I felt like they weren't getting it, which meant I wasn't explaining it properly, of course. And I was trying to figure out why I didn't. And I think it's because I didn't use that idea of what you want to happen. Because when I said what you want, they all cut out pictures of cars and stacks of money and pretty girls and houses.
Well, sometimes people will focus on the material. I mean, almost invariably people ask me, do you have any pictures of money? And of course I bring pictures of money.
Yeah.
But I look at it more from the point of view of energy and of what you want to create or manifest. And a lot of people will look at it as the law of attraction. And that sort of thing, what you want to have manifest in your life. For me, it's about what I want to create in my life.
Yes.
much
Love
more
that.
powerful than saying, okay, I want to have a car, I want to have,
Mm-hmm.
and in fact, they're more powerful if you focus on the feeling you want to have, the emotion you want to have,
Yes, I was just gonna say that.
rather than just specific material things you want to have in your life. Because we all want material things because we think they'll make us feel better or they'll feel good, and so if we can focus on the feelings, it's much easier for them to manifest, if you will. If you're putting that out to the universe and you believe in universal support,
Yeah.
it's easier to have that happen, and it's more powerful to focus on the energy.
Right. So almost like, okay, if there's a picture of a Corvette on your vision board, then why do you want that Corvette? Well, because I'll feel successful, because I'll feel powerful, because I'll
Right.
feel right. So then you could alternatively look for other pictures that represent just the feeling of power or the feeling of success or those kind of things.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, like I remember the last vision board I made, it was a lot about the experiences I wanted to have in my life, places I wanted to travel. Dance was a big thing for me at the time. So there was a beautiful picture of a dancer leaping in the air. And when I looked at that picture, it just made me feel strong and energized. And it focused me on really creating a body and a level of health that would allow me to one day dance like that. So it really is something to strive towards and to focus you on your goals.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sheila. There's so many great ideas in what you said today. We have just a couple of minutes, so I'm going to wrap up and just. I wanted to mention quickly a book you mentioned to me earlier that I thought was so funny. A book called Snoop: What Your Stuff Says About You. And what did this person do?
They studied university students' rooms because they're all the same. And what they were looking at is, what do people's possessions say about who they are? Because if you give them all exactly, the same desk, the same bed, the same things around them, the same size space, how different will they look depending on what they bring to themselves? And how do they organize that? And what does it say about them? So they actually quantified, they measured it. I mean, they had people going through and looking at hundreds of rooms and deciding what it was that was how to differentiate personality, but also what were people trying to do with the space, what were they trying to say about themselves and what they put in their space.
Fantastic way to end. So listeners, what are you trying to say with your space? What kind of space do you want to create for yourself so that it really does feel like the sanctuary you want to spend time in to help you develop optimal health? So thank you so much, Sheila, for joining us today. If people want to learn more about what you do or contact you, where can they find information about you online?
The name of the website is www at the beginning as usual, and A Home You Love Designs.
ahomeYouLoveDesigns.com.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sheila. So thank you for joining us today. And if you'd like to know more about myself, Rebecca Naylor, and the health coaching work that I do, as well as the essential oils class that I teach, and information about the Vox Life neurotechnology that I share, then you can check out my main website, which is www.chronicallywell.club. And from that website, you'll find links to my Facebook video blog, my YouTube channel, and my Instagram account, and you'll also find some links to the essential oils and Vox Life products on that page as well, all of which I highly recommend for people with MS because they have helped me so much. So thank you very much. Stay tuned to future episodes as we explore many others of the 9 keys for healing. And for today, create an amazing day for yourselves, everyone, and be well.